Well, and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Job 35 and 36. Now, I'm sitting just outside our garden fence, and this is not a dam behind me. This is water where it shouldn't be. In fact, it's collected here. I dug a huge hole a couple of days ago because we've had a lot of rain. We had about 500 mils in the whole of December, but then yesterday afternoon, between 3 o'clock and midnight, we had 70 mils, and water is where it shouldn't be. And so that's busy shorting out an electric fence. I look over the fence here and all these farmers. I'm not a farmer. I just live on this little piece of land. And some farmers, I suppose, will be complaining that some of their crops might be rotting now. And some others might say, I can't get into my fields. Weaker farmers are a hard time, don't we? When it's not raining enough, they're telling us about it. And when it's raining too much, they're telling us about it. I know there's some farmers listening this morning. And, rain and thunder and lightning and what happens in the elements is very much part of what Elihu says to Job today. And I suppose when we look at nature and we don't understand it, tsunamis and volcanoes and earthquakes and floods, we know that the earth is groaning. God is all powerful, God is almighty, and the might of nature actually reflects the might of God, doesn't it? But to say that a bit of rain shorting my fence is because, God's judging me, I didn't build a good electric fence. For a farmer to say, I can't get my tractor into my field today because, God is angry with me, is not an accurate representation of who God is. We should look at creation and say, well, God set this in motion. He set this world in motion. We sorted it out, haven't we? Our sin and our ambition and the way we're working the world and the way we're working the land has set all sorts of climatological things in motion. Anyway, so Elihu, as he deals with Job in this particular 2 chapters, firstly we see his view of suffering. Now, he's reasonably similar to his other friends. He's more gracious, though. He gives room for God's grace. He gives room for God's intervention. But this is what he says in verse 7. He says, he does not take his eyes off the righteous. Correct, Elihu. God doesn't take his eyes off you. He's watching you. And he sees your suffering and he sees your pain. He enthrones them with kings and exalts them forever. Well, true, in all eternity, you will sit ruling nations. You will sit in God's kingdom with him. The righteous will be with him and reign and rule with him forever. True. But it doesn't mean that your comfort is going to happen right now, does it? I mean, we would call that prosperity, the prosperity gospel. This is what he says in verse 16. He is wooing you from the jaws of distress to a spacious place, free from restriction, to the comfort of your table, laden with choice foods. He's saying to Job, just behave yourself. God's saying to you, you can live like that, or you can live like a king with choice foods and lavish tables. I'm not so sure that God said that. When Jesus walked this earth and called us to be his disciples, if you follow the pattern of his life, it wasn't tables with choice-laden food. I'm not saying that God won't bless you like that. I'm not saying that you can't walk into his abundance. But it's not defined by the way the world defines it. It's not defined by the world's tables or the world's choice foods, is it? Then he goes into an attack on Job. Now, I think this is uncalled for because I think he puts things in Job's mouth that Job didn't say. He seems to imply that Job wants to sin because God has been ugly to him, which I haven't seen Job say that. And he says then to him, now be careful. Don't follow wayward people. This is verse 18, or their bribes. And then he says, be careful, verse 19, because your mighty efforts can't sustain you. And then he says, now be careful. Don't turn to evil, which you seem to prefer to affliction. Now, Job didn't really do that. So that's not bad advice for a guy who is turning to evil. But that really wasn't Job. But the one thing I can agree with Elihu, and I'm getting back to the water now and the thunder and the rain and these ominous clouds that look like the rain's coming back, is that it demonstrates God's power, demonstrates his magnificence. You can't understand him. He's unfathomable. God is exalted in his power. Who is a teacher like him? Verse 26, how great is God beyond our understanding. He draws up the drops of water, which distill as rain into streams. The clouds pour down their moisture and abundant showers fall on mankind. Who can understand how he spreads out the clouds, where they go, where they come from? Who can understand that? You know how meteorologists, they think they know what's going on, but God set this in motion in the first place. How he thunders from his pavilion. See how he scatters his lightning about. In the depths, he fills his hand with lightning and he commands it to strike on his mark. He announces the coming storm with thunder, and the cattle over the hill here tell us when the storm is coming. He says the cattle announce the coming of the rain. Now, what do we get from the ramblings of Elihu? Well, we get God is almighty and unfathomable, and we should chase after him.